Tomorrow's Tuesday. Tomorrow is Tuesday, and we're learning to code again. Another beautiful week. What did we do last week? We built a VR chat world. Um, that was a lot. That was a lot of random, chaotic thought forms to throw your way. It's fun. It's a world that I know a lot about, but it's also a difficult world to fit into hour-long classes. Um, Spencer started job stand-up today by talking about uh, Tencent and Maxon Studios merging and creating the final boss of CG AI that's going to put anyone holding on to their CG job out of business for good. No, I don't know about that, but yeah, it's the 3D stuff's fun. There's a lot of code there, but it may not necessarily have been the sort of code that y'all wanted to know about. And I understand that. I do still think game development is a really fun jumping off point for not only coding and learning to code, and there's tons of examples of it, whether it's, hacker rank style code games, or like literal Stardew Valley style RPGs that teach people to code without using them. But I also think that game development is great for systems thinking, for looking at setting up your life in a way that's organized and not completely boring. I think that when we get into this mode of systems thinking, of logic and processes, that we can sometimes feel burdened by the sheer mundanity of it all. That being said, working on projects should be exciting. It should be something that you are enthusiastic about. So I want to know, what are we working on in the class? Does anybody have any cool code projects they want to talk about? Feel free to post in the box, or hop on mic if you're on campus. What are y'all working on right now? Nobody? Come on.
Um, I over the weekend I followed Nate B. Jones's newsletter and the Open Brain um, process, which was, I mean, f- it was rough, and but I got it working, and instead of connecting it to Slack, so I'll probably connect it to Discord because I just like that platform better. I'm still learning it, and man, understanding the different pieces there, and trying to figure out what's secure. So uh, my goal not right now is just okay. Every once in a while, I'll just change the API keys um, periodically, just so that I don't know if it makes me feel safer. That I'm not doing anything that is putting putting myself at risk or anything like that, because this is a brand new area. But I I think it's good. I think it's helping me um, keep track of my process as I'm learning so many different things in multiple domains. So that was pretty cool though to get it working and testing it. So I think it's already helping. Yeah.
This is interesting. Nate B. Jones. I thought I wasn't familiar with who this was, so I gave them a quick Google, and I've actually watched a bunch of his videos. I think the algorithm shines bright on this person. and they have interesting stuff to say about AI, from the perspective of somebody who understands the peaks and valleys of such a powerful tool. Um, so this open brain, what like specifically is it kind of like, are you using it as like a personal organization tool? Is that the goal with this? Um,
Yeah.
what I like here is that like the second headline, and I don't know if this is the guide that you were using in your building or if this is something from the past. It looks like it's from late February, which may be outdated at this point. But I like that the second headline is a credential tracker. So some sort of like secondary layer to for you to store all your API keys and stuff. I feel like all these AI evangelists, especially ones that are pushing their own like projects and tools and repos, glaze over this part of the process, which is how you keep the thing secure and personal. Because to have such a personalized tool, you actually are taking a huge risk. Like somebody in the class earlier, I don't know if it was you specifically, but was talking about sharing a bunch of old Excel sheets with their with Claude or their AI, and I feel like with all the stuff that happened with Open Claw and is still happening, that sometimes we're on this spectrum of risk and reward, where we're taking risks early for to be like some of the first people to experience the actual like payoff of having the personalized assistant that we were promised with AI in maybe 2022, 2023. It's here, right? But you need to be willing to provide a fair amount of data about yourself to get it to a point where it's actually effective. Unless you're just the most like neutral person, and in that case, I don't know, but I feel like for a nuanced experience, having an assistant that can actually help, there is a risk that we take with setting up something like this open brain. I like this guy's content. This is like, I like that it's walking people through setting it up. So what is like the end product of this? Is this a server that like runs on your machine? Is it a website that you can go to? What is the Open Brain like at the end of the day? Is it an application?
It I I if I'm in Claude, I'll say I'll say capture this, or this is an important memory. This like I'm in a chat. I'm like, oh, I want to remember this, and it'll Claude will analyze it, and then it, like for example, this morning it broke up a chat that I had into four segments, and then it put it into this database, um, so that I can reference it later. For example, I'll say, um, what was one this morning? Oh, for a communication with a potential prospect, and I had three different pitches, uh, and I said, "Oh, I want to remember this, but change pitch three to include this," and that way, and it spits it out so that it'll tell me how it's saving it, and then later on, if I forget or lose track, I can say, "Oh, there was a pitch that I liked yesterday. Can you point me to it?" And it'll it'll pull up the most probable searches. Whereas if I'm using just Claude's search, if I don't have the right search term in there or remember exactly what was in that chat, I may never find find that again the way I've been working with Claude. So, um, like for example, I put in there, oh, there was a chat I where it was why us, why now in the pitch, and I could not find it, and I typed that into Claude, and it found three different chats that were possible with links to it, and then I was able to click it and get to it.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody in the YouTube chat is saying, is it basically Zettelkasten or a version of Notion or Obsidian? You said maybe your end game is to get it working on Discord. Um, I actually have like a Discord notes server,
Mhm.
because I found, and this is stupid. This is like the most backwards way to do this, but I just have difficulty getting stuff like files from my computer to my phone quickly. And so like originally
Yes.
that's what it was for. And I know there's like websites that do this now. Um, I think setting up something like this, and having ownership over it, right? Being able to point to how the architecture works, even if it is a prompt kit that you're, for lack of a better term, like kit bashing from, somebody you follow like Nate Jones. I think this is huge. I think this is like a really good way to use AI to organize things. Um, when I look at, uh, I don't know, I think about like what triggers my ADD is whenever I'm in like a grocery store or like a kind of odds and ends store, like a retailer like Marshalls or whatever. I always go to the office section because my head is always like electronics, are like you need like a notebook, you need a new dongle, you need another phone charger or something, you know? It's like this like incessant need that like I always have empty pockets when it comes to organizing my life. And um all of the apps out there target this distinct form of retail therapy, I feel, where it's like they know that everyone feels this hole inside. Maybe I'm just speaking to myself here. This like cerebral sort of like hole of not feeling organized enough, or feeling like if I was just shown the right process for listing my goals, or follow this one thought leader who has a notion for how they went from, you know, $1,000 a month to $100,000 a month, like I'm, that's gonna work for me if I just focus on doing it. If I like do the artist journey, and I write my 2 morning pages every morning, like all this stuff. When in reality, um, I think what we're doing is we're filling that hole with the actual like the metacognition, the process of processing. Maybe if I just had the process down, I would be able to find this piece of myself. So in this sort of like chaos of organizing your chaos, make sure that you're not just like, and this is not my advice to you specifically, Roman, it's literally my advice to myself. Make sure that you're not just like finding solace in the act of processing the process, and like every once in a while checking in with yourself and being like, all right, what's the product here? um, is the product me having a more sustainable job? Is the product an application that I'm trying to build? Am I the founder of some sort of company or invention, or community? Uh, and that sort of like reverse engineering will allow you to like kind of pinpoint which of these methods makes the most sense. Because I'm looking at this Zettelkasten method, and it's
Hmm.
like this is like the first person that pops up here when I like Google it is they're talking about how uh, it was used uh, by George Carlin, which speaks to me in a weird way because it's like, but like also like if you're maybe more of a techie person and not so much a writer or an artist or a comedian, you know, um, uh, finding the system that works for you uh, is important, but also finding what works for you to get your product done, I think is is more important, right? It's weird. I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from downloading the organizational app. I am trying to dissuade people from having like mass subscriptions to these sort of like predatory self help applications that I've seen a bunch of. It's the Duolingo of organizing your thoughts. It's the
Yeah.
Duolingo of being able to like of executive function, like all this stuff where it's like, you know, I think one of the weeks we did build like an application that was like our attempt at an executive function application. And what we end up learning at the end of the day that like your executive function is very much like that is your own journey. Whatever gets you to produce, whatever gets you to ship, whatever gets you to execute, as long as you're not hurting yourself or hurting other people, it's like that's the process. Like, can we get closer to that through $15 subscription to application named after a meme raccoon? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe. I don't want to completely dissuade you from doing that. Um, but yeah, we have people in the YouTube chat. Um, uh, Grinding away at your usual projects. Play. Are you working on any personal projects? I see you're in the campus right now. Any personal code projects? Feel free to mic up or just post in the chat. Oh, I'm supposed to learn how to fight my HOA and how they work, but I'm exhausted by them. Oh, yeah, that'll happen. Being exhausted by an HOA. Yeah, what's the specific issue? Is it something that can be fixed with code? Is it something that can be studied with code, or is it more of like an interpersonal thing? They're constantly breaking the law, so there are legal issues. All right. Well, I do not recommend. Uh, you know, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor, so legal and medical, not the things that AI can or should do, but um, benchmarking or researching is something that you can use Claude for. Obviously, taking stuff, whatever you get back, with a grain of salt. Let's look up like a example HOA agreement. Um, up, 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 up. Homeowners associations. HOA agreement. Comparing to my CC and R's. What's a CC and R? Covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Davis-Sterling Act. Oh wow, this is all over my head. You need to use it. It still misses stuff, so you need to use it just to find the correct section. Restriction. Yeah, yeah. No, I feel like a lot of people are in the midst of, you know, uh, battling HOA or a landlord or looking for, or like government assistance, like falling off your unemployment too early, or maybe a past employer not working as a referral for unemployment if you got fired or laid off. And there are definitely, there's a lot of content on the internet about this. This might be like a good thing for us to work on as like a group project this week. Not so much a Zettelkasten application, but some sort of like assistance finding application. Like you put in maybe like your zip code or something, and resources or places to volunteer pop up. I'm thinking about it personally. Like, I started volunteering with a sort of like public access AV community, and through that, I started meeting people that actually had work in the space, and so that became a way for me to sort of get out of this this kind of failed loop of like applying for jobs online and like never getting any real like thing back. It's because like when you personally show up for something IRL, it's and I don't want to be like the complete boomer about it, like, oh, show up with your resume and just shake hands with the guy who runs the place and ask him for a job, like, no, that's like not, it's not 1994, but more so that like forms of rich communication in the environments that that sort of exemplify or enhance that communication is a solid way to lock in whatever you're trying to lock in, right? So exactly, like this HOA, CCNR stuff, boring, right? Boring. Not the sexy coming of age story of my teens and 20s. LMFAO. That's what you are saying. But if you're having these issues with the HOA, surely there's neighbors that are also having issues, and there is this isolating feeling when we're on the computer, researching stuff on our own, typing our own reactions to things, that we lose sight of our community. We lose sight of the fact that like people are around us rooting for us and willing to support us just like we are willing to support other people, right? So have you used like Nextdoor at all? I know this is like a stupid question, and I wouldn't like recommend the application, but every once in a while I'll check out what's happening. Yeah, yeah. I feel like these sorts of applications, or if you've talked to your neighbors, um, maybe going to the library and printing out like a little document um, to pass out to neighbors. Like, have you had these issues? Um, Even doing it like anonymously and like leaving it on people's doorsteps as long as it's like not too like scary or has anything that like is legally yeah. I have to warn people about the illegal BS they're doing. Uh, I'm going to start an anonymous reporting system thing, maybe. All right, cool. And that's something that you could also leverage AI to build. Um, Anonymous reporting system. Maybe that's like uh, what we can build as well. I think that these sorts of like community applications, you don't see them often. Nextdoor is okay, but it's more of like a Facebook use case. And then, depending on what state you live in, you have like the government applications. For California, it's like Cal benefits. You get your Medi-Cal, you get your CalFresh, you get unemployment, all that stuff in one sort of government site. But if it's like, you rarely see the source for all of that from more of a communal centered like Craigslist of um, a Craigslist of assistance. Let's actually see if we could build something like this. That'd be fun. Um, so we'll pop up in Visual Studio Code, um, and we will do a new window. Open a folder. We're gonna go out of whatever folder we were just in. I'll go to LTC garbage, but it's not garbage. I just like calling things garbage. And we'll call this March 30 project. So now once we're in this folder in VS Code, we're working from this folder. I'm going to open a new terminal, which I can go to terminal up here, new terminal. And Claude for me is on the Linux system within my Windows. So I open a WSL shell. Depending on where Claude is installed on your machine, that may not be the case. So we'll open Claude with our dangerously skip permissions flag. And we'll just start brain dumping. So I'll pull myself up here and we'll kind of reorg that. Let's use OpenSpec on this one. So hey Claude, I want you to access OpenSpec and let's make the specifications for an application wherein the user can input their location and the website will show them assistance, as in, unemployment or employment assistance, housing assistance, food benefits, rental bikes, like anything that they could get for free or for very cheap, community assistance, or food banks. They input their zip code and they receive this information. We would also need sort of zip code specific feeds that the users could post to anonymously, as well as like an anonymous reporting system. Um, uh, yeah. Da, 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 da. Anything else we could think of that would make this app good? I know that's ooh, open spec for a spec kit or something like plan mode. And just don't ask it how to get out of paying a $250 million bonus. This person said that they fed in a bunch of PDFs and then the laws, and it was extremely useful to cut down work. We've done this before with Claude, benchmarking terms of service and privacy policies. The one thing that ended up happening was we saw some hallucination, where if there wasn't a specific section of a privacy policy, and we were also benchmarking the AIs against each other, that Claude would often hallucinate entire sections of privacy policies just based off of like its best guess as to what Discord or Facebook or Twitter or any of these social media applications, how they handled privacy, which you could, jump to your conclusions about like why it's bad for the AI to jump to conclusions on things that actually affect people's security. So that's just something to be aware of. The kind of check your work necessity of middle school, high school math follows us into this vibe coding era, and is just as important now as it is ever. Especially if you're building something with the goal of offering assistance to communities, to individuals who need help. You don't want to hallucinate, that there is assistance when there isn't assistance. So that being said, I think if there's links for something, if we have websites, if we have the existence of that pathway to assistance or to volunteer, that would verify, that would validate that thing exists. So make sure that when the assistance comes up, that there is links to offer the user, that we're not just hallucinating the existence of assistance. The existence of assistance. And we'll need kind of exhaustive research done on at least the assistance that exists in U.S. states, or virtually / remotely, for housing, food insecurity, unemployment, any of the things that humans need to survive. Hello, welcome, Alley Cat.
I did it again. I walked into the wrong room.
Oh,
Give me just a second.
It's okay. Making it directly quote and show sources helps. I heard from that YouTube channel Kyrgyzstan spelling that AI also is capable of hallucinating sources, so I have to always click and triple check. Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan.
AI slop is saturating the internet, and things are becoming dramatic pretty quickly. AI slop is saturating.
All right. Kurzgesagt. Is that who you're talking about? Kurzgesagt. Yeah. Yeah. It's, oh man, if we're at the point where it's hallucinating sources, well, cause like that's what I realized too with the source stuff. Years ago, I was using ChatGPT to kind of make a bibliography. I fed it like I just didn't want to make a bibliography for myself, and my God, did that not work. And I don't know if it's still the case, but I would not recommend using AI to make your bibliography. Maybe Claude's better at it, but Easy Bib, we're still out here using Easy Bib. Yeah, it just like botched everything that you could, and it was grabbing just random names that were like in the article to make as the author's name for the article. It was just all over the place. So don't know what it is about how LLMs tokenize things, but the generation of a bibliography can be a pain point for ChatGPT. At least it was in 2024. So maybe it's different now. I think I've watched that AI slop video. It's all slop. It's all slop. I'm drinking slop. I am a giant piece of organic slop. Alright, it's tomfoolering. It's thinking and building something. But what is it building? Alright, so it started the open spec. The spec is written. Here's what open spec covers. Alright, so it made a markdown file.
Job is done.
Markdown files are great. The command for turning your markdown file into like the readable version of it, not that this isn't readable, but to actually get all the headlines and the bold and the italicized text, the formatted text, Control-Shift-V when your cursor's somewhere inside the file, Control-Shift-V will turn it into its readable version. And so we can zoom in on this, and so OpenSpec, Community Assistance Locator is what we're building today. Project codename Lifeline. Wow, I feel like that name's already taken. Isn't Lifeline the thing that's like, help, I've fallen and I can't get up? Isn't that it?
Job is done.
We're not going to call this thing Lifeline. I'll be real about that. Free accessible web application where any person in the United States can enter their zip code and immediately see verified linked resources for survival needs, foods, housing, employment, healthcare, transportation, and more. Hyperlocal anonymous community feeds and an anonymous reporting system giving people a voice without requiring identity. All right. No account required. All right, so we got a front end that's using Next.js, Tailwind, Classic, this classic Claude doing. All right, so it's using Leaflet Maps. I've used this before with OpenStreetMaps. It's free. We're not doing Google Maps anymore. Oh my gosh, we're not geocoding. We're not paying for every time somebody looks up an address. No. Leaflet and OpenStreetMaps. Mwah, this is great. This is like something that I didn't know about until like 2 months ago. Love it. And you can edit the style of your map, which is great. You're not just like locked into the Google Maps colors and everything. Accessibility, we're using Radix UI primitives. Yeah, we got an icon, and then we have React context and something called SWR TanStat query for state. What does that even mean? JavaScript libraries used to manage server state, data fetching, caching, and synchronization in web applications, primarily for React. So we're going to probably be making a bunch of API calls through people entering zip codes. So that makes sense. API, Next.js, database, PostgreSQL. We talked about this last week, maybe the week before. This could be via Supabase or self-hosted. We're probably not going to have time to set up a Supabase today, but maybe later this week. Cache, Redis or Upstash. All right, and for the data layer, we take in zip code data. There's a PostGIS extension. Resources within X miles, so link validation would be a scheduled cron job, and this says it would have a weekly crawl to detect broken links. So now we're setting up some sort of testing system for our own site to make sure that the links aren't broken. I like that. I definitely want to place a precedence on sharing working links. And that would make sense, if a link didn't work, maybe doing a weekly audit of the site. We could also have some sort of user reporting, right? So if a user clicked on a specific link and it took them to a broken page, or maybe a system that is no longer offering assistance, that they could maybe comment, and like something like 3 strikes or 3 flags against a link means it goes down, or we get a mod to check it out. So here's the important part, the data model. What are we actually storing, right? These core entities. We have an entire table for zip codes, where the primary key is the zip code. That makes sense, right? City, state code, county. It has its longitude and latitude, so we know where to pinpoint it on a map. With Leaflet and OpenStreetMaps, you don't need longitude and latitude. This would be more important. We don't need longitude and latitude, but that's cool that it's there. Time zone. And then we have a resources table. So the ID is the primary key. Forget what UUID stands for. Universally unique identifier. The name, the description, the category is a foreign key with a subcategory. And then this scope, see how it says enum? Enum means that there's a choice. There's like a fixed choice of objects within this parameter, right? So the scope could be national, it could be state, it could be county, it could be city, it could be zip code specific. So it's an enumerator, an enum. URL is required. Yes. So Claude caught on to that. We really want there to be a link to the assistance that we're offering. Phone, address, eligibility, income limit notes, hours, created at, updated at. Okay, that's cool. Categories. Category is the FK. It's the foreign key for resources. So now we got category here. Its ID is the primary key. Okay. Community posts. So these are the anonymous community posts. And then reports. Cool. Anonymity design. All right, so this got deep into it. Whole open spec. Just a lot of content. We could spend the rest of class reading through our open specifications, but we're not going to do that. All right, can we start building this? Actually, work out a roadmap for this specific application. I want you to really focus on what can be built in parallel. So, I do not have a dev team for this. This is just me and you working on this application. So I'm going to need to open as many Claude agents as is necessary to work in parallel on this project. Probably 3 to 4. Alright, and we'll see what Claude cooks up here. Ionizing. And for those of you just joining us, I heard this sound. We are building our assistance finding application, which is kind of just a one-off daily app. We'll see if Claude can do this. How do you get the benchmark for how many agents? Good question. I just assumed 3 to 4. But you could ask Claude to kind of how many agents will need to work in parallel. Generally, it's the way that I've seen it with projects that I've set up is it works best when you have the teams as if you were setting up if you had a team of developers, right? So you'll have your front end, you'll have your infra, you'll have an agent that's just focusing on the API, you'll have an agent that's focusing on wiring up the UI UX to the front end and kind of working back and forth with the front end. I've seen as many as 10 agents working at the same time. But yeah, I would say, how do you get the benchmark? So we're using OpenSpec. Have you used OpenSpec with your personal projects yet? OpenSpec, it's a framework for building out the specifications. That might be a helpful resource for getting that number back on how many agents. I love when agents are working in parallel and when they can work in parallel, because often they can audit themselves. So here we go. The roadmap is roadmap.
Job is done.
And we'll open that up. So how many agents did Claude kind of partition out for this project? Team 1, me and Claude, 3 to 4 parallel agent sessions. All right, team 1 human and Claude. All right, working MVP deployed. All right, so it's saying this phase 0 is scaffolding. Let's start phase 0. And then after it builds out this scaffolding, so next.js, so it's initializing all these features. And then all 4 lanes will start simultaneously after phase. Ooh, did I say phase 1 or phase 0? Yeah, I said phase 0. All right. I said phase 1 to the class, but to Claude I said phase 0. So phase 0, scaffolding. phase 1, all 4 lanes start simultaneously after phase 0, right? So we are building the database and seeding the database. Seeding national programs. We have a landing page. We have all right, so it's calling them lanes, which is annoying. But the teams are lanes. And then so we have database and seed, we have front end, we have API, and we have data research, right? So because we started from this place of contemplating like plays HOA and researching like the CC and R documentation, there is an entire team that's devoted to data research, which is important for this application, right? So we have somebody in the YouTube chat saying, I like having the primary Claude act as the project manager agent, coordinating the sub agents and passing off to a QA sub agent before the next task. Beautiful. Yeah, you can have, so generally how it will work is like Claude Prime, like Claude 0 in the situation, delegates the task of the role of project manager to themselves. I've seen this like often, right? The project manager is like the first Claude you're talking to. You can also do something that we learned in Agentic SDLC, where you start opening other terminals. After the first phase is completed, if you have the specifications laid out, you can open other terminals because those specifications will act as your context layer. You don't need to remind the Claude where it's at. You just like start the prompt by being like, look at openspec.md, look at roadmap.md. You are lane B, right? So yeah, Claude Prime, Claude 0 generally acts as the project manager. But this is kind of good practice, right? And you can also get Claude 0 to come back and kind of audit those other Claudes, right? Just like a project manager would. The issue with like the QA subagent that I found is that when Claude is auditing its own work, it does a lot of happy path testing, which I just noticed, you know, not only does it hallucinate data, but you're also working with like a QA engineer that only generates happy path tests. And what do I mean by a happy path test? Happy path test is we're testing that the test exists. We're testing that the site compiles and runs. We're not necessarily testing that the user flow works or that somebody can enter non-alphanumeric as their a birth date and it will go through. You know, like these specific edge cases rarely get caught. Yeah, so these are happy path tests, right? These are happy path tests. These are it's good to have these tests in your TDD, in your test-driven development stack. You want the test that you know is going to pass, if that makes sense. Like, we do need to test if the test is a test, which sounds ridiculous, but we do, you know? But you can't not have all of the parameters of the test be happy path tests. You need the edge cases. You need to test that it's pulling in the right time zones for the right zip codes. You need to test what happens if it's, you know, somebody from Arizona pulling in a, you know, they're trying to organize by time, and it's daylight savings time they're in Arizona, so daylight savings time isn't, an issue, but the entire site is reverting an hour back. Like little things like that that you wouldn't think of. And that's why when you're building these community applications, relying on the community is also an option. Like having your users come back and be like, hey, I noticed that whenever I change, my biography on my profile, I'm logged out and I can't log in again. Little things like that. If you are building a community, you kind of have to build the communal energy into that community. Your users should feel comfortable reporting when the system isn't working. If you're building something for a community, if you're building an application that doesn't have a community in mind, I want to stress thinking about what the community is, because if you're building an application that doesn't have a community in mind, or just as like a tool for yourself, that's cool, but the sustainability, the like purpose of that project is going to wane quicker than one that has a community in mind, because you're building for a non-audience. Even building something for yourself and building something for your own mental health, ease of access, standard of living, like that's building something for the community, right? Because if you're in a good mood, you're more likely to be a solid member of community, not in like the meritocracy sense, more so in like you should strive to build things for people because people are awesome. Like I don't know how else to explain that. I know it feels like a bit of a tangent, but Claude's working on their stuff anyways. Are there any other ideas people have for this application that we're building specifically, or thoughts that kind of came up in that moment of me just rambling on and on and on and on? I see people typing. That's good. Yeah, this person in the chat says we have to keep spam out of an Anon no registration app. That's important. These are all good things to think about. These are all great things to think about. We have to keep spam out of an Anon no registration app. So yeah, people aren't registering, right? So do we take the I hate to say it, but do we take the 4chan route of having like of CAPTCHAs and some sort of janitorial preventing people from Where else do you see this? Like news sites sometimes, but you still have to enter an email to some degree. This person says on re-spam, someone being upset and making 100 accounts to upvote something. Ah ha 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 ha. Do we have upvotes, right? I think upvotes are important. I think ranking systems are important because that's how people kind of validate what is being shared. You know, like in this sort of like anonymous world, right? There are also people. Can it? All right. So this person says, can it grab your IP and just be like one account per IP, auto log them in? Yeah, I mean that's an option, but you know VPNs and there's ways around that. So just linking
Job is
everything to
done.
the IP is a form of security. Getting a little bit more creative with it. A lot of people have dynamic IPs, phi-centric IPs. So, I mean, there's ways to think about it. Really, all right. So the goal is to get people the assistance, to navigate the user towards the assistance. So we think about that first and foremost. If this website gets to the point where people are trolling it, right? Or people are making more accounts to upvote something, right? We have successfully created something that is sweet enough and easy enough to use that people would want to take advantage of it to some degree by making a mass amount of accounts, right? These are all good things to think about when you're making
Job
the
is done.
foundation of something. But again, the sort of like rate limiting, scalability, security questions should come after we actually build the thing. If that makes sense. I mean, that's usually how my head works. Although these are like important things to think about. I mean, another important thing to think about is people feel like really viscerally about assistance. You know, people are against this sort of like, you know, this like anti-woke movement of like people are taking advantage of welfare, you know. It's like, I don't know when being able to afford groceries for your family became such a contentious thing, but there are people who feel very intense about it, that if you do have an anon, no registration site where people can comment, there may be people commenting things that you don't want. Yeah. Yes. So this is a good point too. Like when security is the afterthought, it doesn't work well. When security is shoehorned in after the fact, it doesn't work well. So this is something that like you need to kind of think about while you're building. But if you notice that Claude kind of didn't approach it, any of the sort of like rate limiting captchas, even the registration, you know, we said anon and it just kind of went with it, right? That's another limitation of vibe coding applications is I found that the user flow is extremely under accommodated by a vibe coded workflow, right? What do I mean by that? Just simple stuff that you take for granted when you're using a website. The ability to log in with your Gmail account. The ability to edit your profile. The ability to delete your account when you're no longer using the site as a service. To register and subscribe using a payment platform. These are all stuff, all things that like Claude can kind of screw up. Vibe coding can kind of screw up, so you kind of want to have control over that. Security being shoehorned after building this site, this I would think is more of a human organic intelligence decision that needs to be made early on in the process of building your site. And I know I said let's get the site out the door, let's execute the thing before we worry about security. But the whole community app of it all, once we start building in registration, anonymous posting, that's usually when we think about security. My focus right now is, can a user put in a zip code and get links for assistance back, right? And they can't yet because we don't have the phases. So now it's actually walking me through, ready for phase 1. You can now open 4 terminals and give each agent its lane. So we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll do our Claude dangerously skip permissions. And I'm just pressing into the terminal and then clicking up, and because these are all Linux terminals, it's pulling the last thing that I wrote in the terminal, so I don't need to, there's probably a quicker way to open all the terminals, but I'll be like, want me to write out the exact prompts to paste into each agent session? Yes, I would love that. This person says, get an MVP up. Minimum viable product. Somebody's skateboarding outside. It's marinating on these prompts. Boop 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 boop. You want to come in here? Come on. Come in here. Come on. What are you barking about? It's taking forever to come up with the prompts. Maybe Claude's just having a down day. Let's see. Claude. Is Claude down? Claude status. No incidents. Oh, there we go. Oh, it just gave me this. All right.
Job is done.
Oh, these are long prompts. So we'll give phase 1. Terminal 1 is lane A. We'll give it this one. And terminal 2 is lane B. We'll read over these after we set the terminals to be working on them. Terminal 3 is lane C. And terminal 4 is lane D. And this is where the dangerously skip permissions comes in handy, because if you just instantiated all these Claude terminals and you had them going off, they would be stopping every time there's a file that they needed access to, or every time they needed to change something that they didn't have permissions to. And that kind of wrecks this like illusion of the immersion of having our office of Claude workers doing their thing. So what do these prompts look like? You are working on the Lifeline. Oh, it loves the name Lifeline. We're using we're not going to use the Lifeline name. We're going to take the Lifeline name out of it once these are all done. Read Claude MD, then read. All right. Did it make a Claude MD? I don't even know if it made a Claude MD. So it's telling itself to. Oh, it made a Claude MD inside the Lifeline project. All right. Whew. All right. Your file ownership, so it designates the phase and the lane. Lane A, database, and C, data. Your file ownership. Only create, modify these files. So it's giving them access to the Prisma files. All right. And the Prisma files they kind of define the model for us to what I am seeing. So this website's doing
Job is
something a
done.
little bit annoying as far as the database is concerned. Is it's making like a giant JSON. Wouldn't be the way that I would build this. That's how Claude is doing it today. It's kind of annoying. Again, this is like what we learned through vibe coding some of these things is maybe a national programs.json is okay. I think it's because we kind of slept on like whether or not to use Supabase that it's now like deciding like, all right, well, for an MVP we really only need a JSON file, but it's going to be a really long JSON file. All right, and now these are
Job
also
is done.
set up to test themselves, right? So this is testing its own API points, which is really cool. It's building a landing page. All right, so after all 4 agents complete, come back to your main terminal and all right. So main one is still kind of going. Terminal 2, lane B is still building out the pages. This is front end. Lane C was API, I believe, and that is still going. It's testing out the API endpoints. And lane D is our data research. Data research is done, but it has 10 local agents running. And something that I don't like about the data research lane team is that it said that it's only looking up results for the 10 most populous states in America. So again, Claude's doing this like pseudocode, hard code thing where it's like, we got to get the MVP out. So instead of looking at things for at assistance for every state, we're only going to get the top 10 states for the MVP. So top 10 states based off population. We have California, Texas, Florida, New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Ohio, Georgia, North Carolina, and Michigan. So If you're in Oregon, you're screwed. If you're in Washington, you're screwed. If you're in Montana, if you're in Massachusetts, right? So I don't like that. I don't like that. I think that's so we see it's like not only does like Claude hallucinate sometimes, but sometimes it
Job
just
is
like
done. Job is done.
does the bare minimum in a way
Job
that
is done. Job
you,
is done.
you never really asked for it to do that, you know. It's like I don't want to say it's like lazy, but it's like, you know, it's not exactly what we wanted, and it doesn't make a whole app. Yeah.
Job is done.
So this person in the chat says, one thing I noticed lately
Job is
that
done.
Claude is blocked from a lot more websites. I wonder how this affects the app that we're making now. You need to get creative with the way that you're sending Claude to retrieve data.
Job is done.
It's no longer as simple as just like Claude using Playwright
Job
and
is
going
done.
off and doing their own thing. But there
Job
are
is done.
ways, if you know what, and sorry for the job is done annoyingness. I tried to turn off that notify.sh and I couldn't get it to turn off. I need to spend a day just like I don't know. I don't
Job
know
is
what Claude
done.
did, if they like added this like notification to the BIOS level of my computer or something, but it's never gonna end.
Job is done.
All right, so we got are they all done? API still going. Lane B is not going
Job is done.
anymore. Lane B is done, and is lane A done? Lane A. All right, so it's just lane C now. Testing those API endpoints. Yeah, often it might be because it doesn't have enough context window left to finish all the states. This is a good point, right? That's going to be a lot of text, right? So you have to think about it in terms of this like monolith JSON that it's making, right? And where is this thing? Public.
Job is done.
Yeah, these monolith JSONs that it's making. So for each state, you know, California is 660 lines of code. Let's do Georgia. Georgia might be a better. Georgia's 660 lines of code as well. 660 times 50. Yeah, so 33,000. The context window gets a little like slushy after a certain amount of text.
Job is done.
So typically around like 200,000 tokens, right, is where we start getting like bad results back, right? There could be multiple tokens in a line of code, right? So like we might be already pushing it with these JSONs. And you're losing optimal performance of Claude. That's why it's like important that the tokens that we are using are not spent on the actual data context within the app, but they're spent on building the system for the application. Like we would rather have Claude build an application to retrieve this data than Claude
Job is done.
store the data, read the data, write the data, update the data all on its own, right? Because we can read the data, we can retrieve the data. with a well-built application. But if Claude's starting to use its tokens to parse through the data that it's pulling, then it becomes this like issue of economy where we're not using our tokens spend in a way that makes sense anymore. And it's kind of hard to explain, but I've noticed that this like 200,000 like Liz calls it like I forget what Liz calls it, dumb Claude, dumb mode, something. I'm botching that, but it does get to a point where like you're feeding it too much. It's wasting its tokens to read its own tokens, and the context window starts to kind of eat your code alive. And maybe that's why we had this 10 state limit, is Claude had the premonition that its context window would suffer because of this application. But that's where it takes you as the prompter to kind of like okay, now we are making, somebody in the chat's saying exactly what I'm trying to explain, right? You could try and tell it to spawn an agent per state and to output a JSON file per state instead of the monolith, right? So something like that. Like we don't want it to waste its tokens understanding, like going over what it's already written. All right. Anyways, we're coming up on an hour and 20 minutes of this. Is there a specific application that we want? Do we want to build a group application this week, or would we rather just like move around on different applications? What's the vibe? Because we could like really dial in this application this week, or we could kind of leave it here as sort of like a toy application, and we hopefully got some insights from this. What's the vibe? Do y'all want to keep working on this? Do you want to work on a different application this week, or do you want to have a week where we bounce around? All right. Yeah, somebody's saying I'm down for whatever. Somebody's saying why not all of us work on this one? It seems like a valuable tool. I like this application. I think this application, if we actually built it together and it was functioning by the end of the week, could be something we can kind of put our fingerprints on and be like, hey, we built this together as the Multiverse
Job is
tool.
done.
Take it or leave it. It offers community resources. You put your zip code into it. Very solar punk, very engaging, very chill application to be able to put on your portfolio, and might even at the end of the day be able to offer you assistance that you may need, or
Job
your
is done.
community assistance that they may need. So I think it's really useful. So yeah, let's keep working on this. I'll post it to GitHub and get you all the requisite links for that. So we'll go into GitHub here, and I'll create a new repository. I don't want to call it Lifeline. Is there a better name for this that anyone can think of? This is the fun part. This is the part that always, like, I could spend so much time on just coming up with the name for the application.
Job is done.
Give us time to come up with the name. But the name's got to be the name of the GitHub repo. Or maybe it doesn't need to be. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I like this. Yeah, Lifeline sucks. Community linker. A little long. Read the source. Read source. Read source. Sourcely. Resourcely. Resource. It could be like resource like this. Kind of like hackery. Helpinator. All right, now we're going off the deep end. Helpinator 3000. I'll figure something out. Resource is good. You like this? Resource. Yeah, like resource. Resource. But SRC is like your code, you know? A community resources app for finding local assistance and as well as an anonymous reporting tool. Chooseville is a public resource. All right. And there you go. Dude, Lane C is taking its sweet time on this, I'll tell you that much. So we will actually CD into Lifeline. Git add dot git commit resource. Ooh, or maybe we get. Oh, I already had it. So git add did the git init. That was, I did those out of order with each other. I did git add before git init, but I think git add just ran a git init. I'm hoping. Git commit resource application first commit. Git remote add origin main. I think that's the. I always forget. Git remote add origin. We don't need the main here. But we do need the H there. And then git push u origin main. So, because we just pushed this from our PowerShell, as opposed to having Claude walk us through the push in my WSL, Claude is not going to be listed as a contributor on this repo just yet. Something to keep in mind when you're vibe coding, if you don't want Claude listed as a contributor on your repo for whatever reason, then make sure to do all of your git commands from a separate terminal. And the second that Claude touches a commit, Claude's a contributor. Sorry about you. That's just how it works, right? Which makes sense. I never really mind Claude coming into a project, right? We're working on this project with Claude. Claude should get its contribution credit, right? If you're worried about the optics of what it looks like to have Claude as a contributor on your application, I want you to take a moment to question where that fear comes from, because it's years from now, it's not going to be something that we're thinking of as like this like shame guilt association. But right now, while there's all this like contention around using AI, I do feel that some people, myself included, may have a little bit of imposter syndrome or this cognitive dissonance that comes into play when using AI to assist them in their projects, especially with the whole war machine technology, the Palantir of it all. That being said, if you really don't want Claude on your project, you're going to have to learn how to run your own Git commands from your own terminal. And that's an important step to learning to code regardless. Cool. So that's going to push, although it still is working here. So it might not push with all those API endpoints. And we didn't really get a solid test of this project yet. So keep that in mind. If you want to pull it onto your own machine, you would be compiling it on your own. But yeah, I know a handful of you in the chat have already made pull requests, so you know how to do it. We'll check the crab pots tomorrow morning. If you do end up continuing your work on this throughout the day, keep in mind that lane C was not configured, right? And so what was lane C? API resources, API feed, reports, health, input validation, query logic. It was essentially the controller for a lot of our data. And it wasn't configured. So I'll make a push when this endpoint test is finished. If you do have plans to work on this, what sorts of things can we work on today without the configuration? Oh, good question. Let's see. How do I test the site? There's a lot to work on without lane C having finished. So it's running its dev server.
Job is done.
Is it running a dev server? All right, so npm run dev is what we want to run. Npm run dev. Next is recognizes an internal. What is going on? Maybe we have to run it from WSL. Oops. npm run dev. Does that work? Oh, it's not even opening. It's not even compiling. That's not great. npm run dev does not work. Clotting. What sorts of things can we work on today without the configuration? Let's see if
Job is done. Job is done.
Alright, now I'm like losing. Oh, okay, we were blocking port 3000. Are you so sure about that? So it still doesn't
Job is
work.
done.
On WSL, we're getting that error, and on Windows, we're getting this error.
Job is done.
The key issue, you need to CD into Lifeline first. Oh, okay. But I am in Lifeline here. But maybe from WSL. Let's see. Does it work? Yeah, my dog. There's a guy coming to fix the tile today. Oh, I gotta keep him in here. Alright. What help is available near me? Let's put in. Cool. Alright. 94930 is not New York. I don't think. Yeah, it's California. So maybe that's something you can work on. I don't know. There's a lot of there's infinite things to work on. Don't worry about stepping on the toes of lane C right now, because it seems like it's kind of not doing well with the task that it was asked to do. I will ask, can you change all references to Lifeline to resource? We changed the name of the project to resource. But yeah, it's just straight up botching the zip code, which is, that's not good. Why would 94930 come up as New York? Anyways, I will post a link to the GitHub repo in the Matrix channel. It's in the chat for all of you that have been following along and watching today. Yeah, local help maybe is better. Well, yeah. All right. We can brainstorm names all we want. There's a bunch to work on. Work on what excites you. You don't even need to work on this project. Open up your personal code project. Just whatever you do, code something today, and I will see you tomorrow. Y'all have been great. I have been Neek, and we're going to be working on this Lifeline resource local help application this week, and it's going to be fun, and we're going to help the community by doing it.